Good morning. Welcome. Welcome, friends. Today is a celebration of who we have become in the quest for a successful future, in the future of new members. This is our 25th year, a quarter of a century, shaping part of Venice, Southwest Florida, and for producing a safe haven for liberal religious explorations and social justice for all. Gathered among us are past leaders who have brought us to this day. Would anybody who's ever served on the Board of Trustees please stand? Thank you very much. Now, if you ever served as a president of this board and can still stand. Speaking for the entire congregation, I thank you for the leadership while serving and for your continued support and guidance that you have given UCOV. As part of the bylaw revisions, I have asked that you as past presidents be allowed and made available to assist the present board in their dealings in decision-making. I hope that will meet with your approval. Reverend Amy, would you please join us and open the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Venice 2023 Congressional Annual Meeting.
We light our chalice this morning with these words. Blessed is the work of the congregation. Blessed are each of you. We are entering into a sacred time in which we do the work of this amazing congregation. It has been a wild ride over the last 18 months, has it not? In 18 months, you have lost a settled minister, gone through multiple pulpit supply ministers, put together a search team, and gotten one of the few available interim ministers in our UUA. You survived a Category 5 hurricane, the first one to hit here in, 100 years? And we did it without missing more than 1 week of church. We've put together a search team to find you your own settled minister. You've done the work. You've put in the time. You are amazing. Thank you for being here today to do this sacred task, the work of your church, of your congregation. Be blessed.
Thank you, Reverend Amy. I'm Jack Head, the board president, and with the lighting of this chalice, I open this meeting. Mo, as board secretary, please read the UUCOV Board of Trustees Covenant.
The Board of Trustees is the governing body of this congregation. It represents and acts for the congregation to set policy, conduct church business, and advocate for UCOV and Unitarian Universalism values. Toward that end, we pledge to respect our fellow trustees by respecting all opinions, listening actively and openly, and holding open and respectful discussions during meetings. We pledge to respect our congregation by listening to the concerns of the congregation, by speaking with one voice on voted decisions, and by being truthful and transparent in our communications to the congregation.
Thank you, Mo, and I can report that this board has followed in everything that you just read. Mo, do we have a quorum?
We do.
Thank you. Mo, would you ask, on her behalf, may I have a motion to accept the 2022 annual meeting minutes as they were distributed? Somebody,
I'll make the motion.
got, Richard's made a motion. Second?
I'll second.
Got a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. On Mo's behalf, I ask for a motion to approve the Congressional 2023 meeting agenda. You got a, Rich?
Richard Camerota.
Good. John? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Brief note on what we've accomplished, although Reverend Amy has put it in very distinct words. I would like to add to that. You elected individuals to serve on a board, accepting leadership roles and addressing numerous challenges within the church, within the community, and within the UUA. The board has met the 2022 objectives set by the board on August 2020. We said that we would facilitate a smooth transition from a settled minister to a part-time contract ministers. That was Minister of the Month Club. We will hire an interim minister to lead us through a transitional period. We will work to affirm and promote our 7 principles in the congregation, in the community, in the world. We will work with the interim minister to create a vision for UCOV's future. We will select a search committee to find and present a candidate as our new called minister. We feel that we have addressed and accomplished all of those. In addition, we accomplished the following. We successfully created an interim minister search committee led by Janet. Here's Janet. They gave us a senior transition minister in Reverend Amy Petrie Shaw. She is both a trained transition minister and a regional transitional team coach. She has served as a called minister, as well as for us, a transition minister. Though there was a swelling group who wanted her to stay here with us as a called minister, her contract and status with the UUA forbids it. We tackled the MS easement issue, actually Steve did, that has been a problem for a number of years. A very time-consuming research netted us more documents, a new survey, and a contract on how we would deal with the road. Both Steve, Ken, and Bill have been involved with negotiations very successfully in having a lawyer who would help us through the legal ramifications of that. The future is bright with them, and soon you will see a new road in front of the sanctuary, including speed bumps. Although because of our age, we did not want many speed bumps where you and I walk, because I don't want to trip over them. Steve has informed me that the speed bumps will be in such a location that will slow down their traffic and not be impeding on us getting here to our church. Thanks to Bill Reynolds, we have updated a rental on campus usage form and procedure. We have added the appropriated insurance requirement for all renters. Their insurance policies now include our name as insured if they're using our building. Minor thing, but you can understand, you could ask the legal people about that. Thanks to Serena, we successfully handled COVID pandemic that plagued many churches and civic organizations in our community. During the period, some of us were leery of venturing into gatherings such as church. Tom Reeves brought our Sunday services into our house, and he and Eddie delivered our Sunday services into our vacation homes, snowbird residences, and also into visitors' homes. Thank you, Tom. We have begun an extensive campus facelift, including building elevation, signage, street, and parking. Working with the city, we updated the Pine Brook sign, which is now digital, and are increasing the corner and drive signage. A note is that the Pine Brook sign is our main sign because we have a Pine Brook address, thus being in Venice. If we move to the address over here, we would now be located in Nokomis. And therefore, we have decided that's where our main sign has to be to promote who we are in Venice. Minor change, doesn't affect you, but as visitors it does change. We have changed the web page down in the lower left-hand corner to indicate how to get here, because people who drive up and down Pine Brook can't get through the jungle or swim across the pond. It's been done. The board asked Richard Cardinale to be our pledge chair with the understanding that we wanted to find enough pledge money to cover the operating budgets. He accepted the challenge with the goal of 100% participation and 100% pledge money to cover the budget. Though the congregation fell short of his and the board's goal, Richard's enthusiasm and dedication to the process have awarded us financial well-being for the coming year. Thanks, Rich. Once he turned in the money, he said to Ken, make it work. Ken, who was our treasurer, was able to refine the budget reflecting the shortfall of the pledges. This year, he will be working, Ken will be working with committees on improving their 24-25 budgets. Ken has also had his eye on the needing of other financial well-being issues for our church. Hurricane Ian was somewhat devastating to the community. However, the recovery of our location included some much-needed repairs. Initially, the solar companies said that we would have to replace the panels that flew off the roof. Steve negotiated with them, and the original panels were put back on the building at much less of a cost than replacing them. The good news is, yes, thank you, Steve. The good news is there was minor damages to our roofs. The bad news is that sometime in the next 3 to 5 years, most of them will have to be replaced. But for right now, we don't leak. When Blue Lotus lost its building, Dave Lyons and Reverend Dennis McCarty offered our facility to them. Since then, our relationship has grown. They're recovering from the devastating loss with our assistance. Since they have become an integral part of our weekly activities, we negotiated with them to ensure a successful formal lease agreement. Thanks to many who volunteered and donated, the UCOV held a successful art auction for the first time in several years. The profits far exceeded the goals set. This is but one of the many attributes that we have received when Reverend Amy came into our church. Thank you. Jan and Steve Simon, Pat Wellington, Marcy Smith, will represent us at the UUA General Assembly. In addition to attending business meetings, seminars, they will be soliciting ministers to consider a move to Southwest Florida. Besides wearing billboard t-shirts and handing out our business cards, they will, by just being there, show the strength and value of our congregation. We developed a strategic planning committee chaired by Bill Reynolds, who conduct extensive research and focus group in which many of you participated. They compile a report, compiled, and are reporting their findings. Their information will be leadership's compass in planning activities for the next 3 to 5 years. In November 22, the board met with UUA Transition Program Manager Christina Purcell. Board member Serena realizes that our schedule and the UUA's schedule for finding a new minister was not concurrent. Since we are a congregation with seasonal members, Serena negotiated an early search committee selection process. She prepared the board and presented a timeline for us to hire a new minister. With the assistance of Reverend Amy, they started educating the congregation on phase 2 of that search. The board started holding congressional conversations after Sunday services as a question and answer session, as it seemed appropriate for the transparency of the board activities and members' concern. Following the UUA guidelines, we have successfully selected a search committee to find and present candidates for our new called minister. That was held in January. An email was sent out to all members asking for questions, and a ballot to nominate an individual for that search committee was sent as well. The results of the selection formed a search committee. The slate of candidates was presented at a special congressional meeting following the Sunday service on February 19, 2023, for the final approval of the slate. Vote was taken and approved. The Finance Committee, led by Don Cortell, has again brought us through another investment nightmare of a year. Under their direction, our investments have served us well. Again this year, we drew from these investments to cover the budget items not covered by pledges. We owe that committee a lot for the persistence and dedication. I have asked that committee be recognized and be elevated to a standing committee. The board has recognized John Spitzer and Mark Murray to bring energy to the Legacy Friends. Under their guidance, they will ask congressional members to join their prestigious group of loyal UCOV friends with their present and future financial donations. This spring, John and Mark will work with the board to develop information brochures and visit with members. Their committee will grow with enough individuals to accomplish their task. We have asked them to do 2 things: to report on the differences between what has been donated and what has been promised, and to develop legal documents required for an administrator to distribute charitable beneficiaries to the UCOV. I look forward to their finding. The essential report that you all came to hear was that our committees are busy providing activities for all of us. The search team is engaged, the campus looks good, and we are financially sound. All thanks to the many who volunteer their resources. Respectfully submitted, your president, Jack Head. Thank you. Ken, would you come up here and give a treasurer's report?
Good morning. This year saw some amazing things. The congregation and their generosity, passing the basket, well-deserving causes, provided more than $30,000 in donations to charitable groups. One of those you might remember earlier last year was when Ukraine was invaded. That alone accounted for $8,000. And we've been steady passing the basket and have been very generous. Our budget for this current year, ending April the 1st, was $356,500. Our income as of February the 28th, because our accounting system is computed on the last of the month, so I have to use February the 28th as a milestone. Our income was $378,000 and change. Our expenses is $385,000 and changes. That does not account for income coming in for the month of March. We had unanticipated expenses that was related to Hurricane Ian that accounted for $54,000. We received $30,000 in donations from the congregation. We needed to draw down our operational reserve fund by $25,000 to cover those anticipated expenses. Investments. And I would like to recognize the subcommittee on the investments. Joel Morrison, would you please stand? John Spitzer. Tom Hartley. Okay. And they've really put in a lot of work. As of this morning, in Vanguard with our investments, we have $379,000 in the endowment fund. In the futures fund, we have $96,000. In the Helen Lynch Memorial Fund, we have $27,000. And in our operational reserve fund with the Gulf Coast Community Foundation, we have $100,000. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them after the meeting. Thank you.
As I mentioned, we started a strategic planning committee whose goal was to give us a compass on what we should be spending our money and resources on in the next 3 to 5 years. We asked Bill Reynolds to share that, and I would like to have him give a report now.
Good morning, everybody. I am Bill Reynolds. I am a proud member of this board. And I'm also a very proud member of the strategic planning team. And for the last year, I've been working with a fantastic team of people, which include Rich Canarelli, Barb Gundy, Bev Morrison, and Jackie Wides, to begin a long-term strategic plan for UCOV. Now, you might ask why. Well, UCOV needs a strategic plan at this time because when we opened up after being closed during the height of COVID, we realized that we are at an inflection point in the history of our congregation. We need a new settled minister. Our surrounding community is experiencing rapid growth. Many of our most active members are advancing in age. Our pledges, along with the optimum annual contribution from our endowment fund, could be challenged in years to come as our expenses increase. We need a plan to acknowledge these trends, prioritize our projects and activities, and successfully adapt to our changing environment. Let me be very clear that the charge to our team was not to write the plan by ourselves. Our job was to discern the will of this congregation, and that is you. How do you want to move forward over the next 3 to 5 years? In order to do that, we have taken a two-pronged approach to elicit your ideas, concerns, and aspirations. First, we held 10 focus groups since last September and asked about 80 of our members a series of thought-provoking questions on a number of topics, including campus utilization, membership growth, the role of spirituality at UCOV, financial sustainability, and much more. Second, we distilled the information from the focus groups into a survey designed to ascertain the priorities of the congregation. Every UCOV member and contributing friend received an email with this survey on March 15th. As of this morning, we have received 75 online responses. The survey will close this coming Thursday, March 30th. We want your input very, very much. And this is your last call to participate. If you have not received this survey, please see me after the meeting and I'll be happy to send you a very personalized email with a link that you could access it with. It may very well be in your spam folder if you haven't checked. Next week, we will begin the process of interpreting the survey responses. And within a few weeks after that, we will incorporate those responses into a proposed strategic plan to present to the Board of Trustees and to the congregation at large. This will not be our team's plan. It will be your plan, our collective plan. Our team feels very privileged to be working on this with you on this project. Thank you. I've also been asked to give a brief summary of our insurance situation. As all of you know, Ian has kind of changed the landscape for all of us on homeowners insurance and everything else that we do with property in the state of Florida. And the good news is that our policies renewed on February 27th. All of them except for the wind and hail policy essentially renewed as expiring in terms of coverage as well as in terms of premiums. That's the good news. Bad news is we have a separate wind and hail policy, which last year was written by one of the syndicates in Lloyd's. And that was non-renewed this year as that particular syndicate left the state of Florida altogether, just as a lot of insurers did. We were, however, able to secure wind and hail coverage with a different syndicate at Lloyd's, but the premium increase was very substantial. It went from $13,900 to $26,500. Simply put, the underlying costs for wind insurance coverage and the demand for coverage both increased significantly after Hurricane Ian. This is a perfect recipe for large increases in premium and a lack of available options. In preparing for this past renewal, I attempted to remarket the entire program, but met with very little success. There are essentially two specialty insurance carriers for church insurance in the United States. One is Guide One, which is where we currently have our coverage, and the other is Church Mutual, who I did contact. Response from Church Mutual was that they would not be able to provide coverage as we did not fit their underwriting program. The big reason is our package policy here, ex-wind, is about $5,000. They have a minimum premium of $25,000. So we just don't fit with their program. I also contacted 5 churches in the Venice area to find out who they did their insurance with, thinking that maybe there's an option out there that I'm not aware of. Unfortunately, I could only get one response, and as it turns out, that particular church had recently moved their program to where we have our current program. So I think it kind of confirms that we were probably in a pretty good place. Going forward, I'll continue to search for quality coverage at the lowest possible cost, but obviously the outlook for the Florida insurance market on wind and hail is not very promising. Finally, as Jack mentioned, I have a concern about the age of the roofs on our 3 buildings, one we just replaced. I also have a concern about hardening the sanctuary. Look around you, we're covered by walls of glass, none of which is storm rated, and we don't have shutters. We were very fortunate in the last hurricane not to be affected internally here. However, both the roofs and the lack of hurricane protection on the perimeter could become a factor in our ability to obtain coverage, particularly at an attractive price going forward. And I know these are going to be costly repairs and improvements for the congregation, but this is really something that's going to have to kind of raise its profile on the radar screen over the next several years as we move forward. Thank you very much. Jack?
I know we had problems with the storm at my house, but when Bill says, you realize, Jack, on our buildings, we have a $75,000 deductible. Those are different kinds of numbers that I have trouble with. And if you have questions about the insurance, or you have a brother-in-law that sells insurance, Bill will be glad to talk to you about that. Barbara, would you come up, please? And we would like to talk about charitable giving. As you know, the UCOV picks charitable organizations that we give money to. She has reached out to us numerous times and asked for our input on who we should select. Her last go-round was she spent 2 solitary hours in Waters Hall knitting, waiting for somebody to come in and challenge who she has picked, or the committee has picked, and nobody showed up. So she's pretty assured that you agree with her on these. Yep, it's all yours.
Okay. The list of charitable organizations that our committee has come up with, they're all nominated by members of this congregation. They were introduced to the members of the social justice team at an open meeting, and they were invited to give feedback. And then the committee chairs and I met and decided on the following list, some of them old, some of them new. Family Promise of South Sarasota County's Open Door Program. It's been one of our charitable organizations for several years. It gives families with children that are facing homelessness a chance to get back on their feet. They do this by helping with rent payment if the family falls behind, or by helping pay first, last, and security deposit on a rental home, or by paying for 1 to 3 days of emergency shelter in a motel while housing is being secured. Another current charitable organization is Good Samaritan Pharmacy and Health Services. They provide medical services to uninsured, financially needy residents of Sarasota County. Their CEO, George Forcier, gave a short presentation about their services at a recent visit to UCOV. They provide free access to prescription and over-the-counter medications, as well as access to physician services, including diagnostic testing. They are located in Nokomis and are staffed almost entirely by volunteers, including volunteer doctors. A new one, Planned Parenthood of Central and Southwest Florida, provides affordable access to comprehensive reproductive health care and accurate health information through patient care, education, and advocacy. In Florida, as elsewhere, women's reproductive health is under threat. Each year, more than 30,000 women, men, and teens visit Planned Parenthood of Southwest and Central Florida's health centers. Our neighbor, Laurel Civic Association. Their programs address hunger, youth development, after-school and summer programs, community development and education, including adult education. UCOV was instrumental in helping them to start their Hand Up program that helps break the cycle of poverty by providing financial education and resources to people living on the economic edge. That program has expanded and is doing well. UCOV members volunteer for their homework helper and summer reading programs. Laurel Civic also holds a weekly food distribution. On the Spot Aid is a street medicine outreach organization founded 4 years ago by a retired nurse and a retired paramedic. They visit homeless camps, parks, and food distribution sites to treat homeless people's illnesses and wounds. They give out wound care kits so people can continue treating their cuts or infections and refer those who need additional care to appropriate facilities, supplying rides to those facilities when needed. They have also received and distributed mats made by our UCOV mat makers. They are headquartered in Venice and serve Venice, Port Charlotte, Englewood, and Northport. Finally, Second Chance Last Opportunity is a community-based grassroots organization that has been offering life management skills to at-risk teens and their low-income and/or homeless families since 1995. Their clients often face multiple health, social, and economic challenges. Along with strategies and skills for success gained from the classes, they offer counseling, health education, youth programs, and shelter referrals. They also offer food distributions. You may have seen an article on the front page of the Herald Tribune recently about the founder, Dr. April Glasgow. The UU of Sarasota is also one of their sponsors. Thank you. Do we have a motion to vote? Motion to vote on the slate of charitable organizations. John? Second? Linda? All in favor? Linda Underwood.
Very good, thank you. Ken? You want to get an approval on your budget?
The budget for fiscal year '24 was constructed, refined, and reconstructed by the Finance Committee, myself, and the trustees. Would the Finance Committee please stand up, because they've really put a lot of work into this. For fiscal year '24, we have a sum of $382,500 for operational expenses. Can I have a motion to accept that? Mark? And seconded by Richard Palmer. All those in favor? It carries.
I want to thank the nominating committee for putting forward a slate of candidates that include Board of Trustee positions and 2 members to serve on next year's nominating committee. Using the nominating committee to fill positions is a tradition at UCOV, where we form a nominating committee that presents slates that we then vote on and accept. In the past, they've offered and you have accepted their findings. The nominating committee can and does put people together that they feel will fit the needs, as opposed to us as individuals trying to figure out who our neighbors are and say it's your turn. So at the present time, the Board of Trustees include me for my second year, Ken for his second year, Bill for his second year, and Pat Wellington for her second year. So we have 2 openings on the board. We have Steve, who has been the vice president for 2 years, and it's a do-over. We're going to ask him to stay on as vice president for another year. So those are the 3 board members. And then we have 2 that will be on the nominating committee. Judith, would you come up and explain that better than I? Pat, don't laugh. Thank you. Watch your head.
So we have 2 remaining board positions that we need to fill. The nominating committee has proposed Barbara Buring for secretary and Jean Sibber for the trustee, open trustee position. Do we vote on this first and then the nominating, or all together?
Put it all together.
Okay. And for the nominating committee, there are 2 positions open at this time, and they will be Linda Underwood and Kendra Muntz. Do we accept the nominating committee's recommendations? Call for a vote on the slate. Call for a vote on the slate. Does anyone want to call for a vote on the slate? Okay, Mark? Second? John? Vote? Call for a vote? Thank you.
Yeah. With the 2 new board members, come up here, we got some jobs for you. Jean, you came back from your vacation early. Yes. So you have a new name tag. Oh. Thank you very much. Same to you, Robert. And you keep losing your name tag, so we just get your wife like you renew it every year. Thank you very much. You want to stay up here, get on there, it's up to you. You're all set. Jan, would you come up, please? There you are.
Good morning. As you have, hi, Eileen. As you have seen on the website and on the email you received about this meeting, an attachment was the bylaws. We had a bylaws committee. I want to thank them very much for their input. They included Richard Palmer, John and Jean Spitzer, and Ellen Higdon, and myself. And we had lots of good input, lots of thorough discussion, not only input from members of the bylaws committee, but members from the congregation, and then they were our recommendations were presented to the Board of Trustees, and we received suggestions from the board as well. And what you have hopefully reviewed is the end result of all of that. Like any good process, I forgot a sentence. So I do want to say that we did take out, at the request of the board, the under Section 2, Standing Committees, Nominating Committee, we deleted nominations from the floor. As Jack just explained, we have always used a process of a nominating committee to create nominations and ask the congregation to vote on those. And also, I believe there was requests at the beginning of that process for people to self-nominate if they wanted to serve. So the sentence that I took out was nominations from the floor would be accepted with 2 seconding nominations. We do not allow that, and that is at the recommendation of UUA also. And what I need to insert is that nominations from the floor will not be accepted because we need to explicitly state that. The reason being that we follow the democratic rules of order as opposed to Robert's Rules of Order for our congregation. Is that correct? Did I state that correctly? No. Okay, tell me what I said wrong then. No, we don't. These are the bylaws. Okay.
We need a microphone in the back.
Article 16 is what you're referring to, Linda, correct? Okay, that reads, "The rules contained in the current edition of Robert's Rule of Order, newly revised, shall govern the congregation and board in all cases to which they are applicable and in which they are not inconsistent with these bylaws, articles of incorporation, or applicable law." And so what it says in the I'm thinking of the UUA guidelines, but they say that you follow Robert's Rules of Orders unless otherwise stated in your bylaws. And so that is why we are stating otherwise in the bylaws where we are not explicitly following Robert's Rules of Order.
I agree that we move away from Robert's rules, so I'm not objecting
Right.
to that. It's just that we have in our current bylaws that we have to follow Robert's rules. So we have to change that in our bylaws if we're going to not follow Robert's rules.
We can do that without any problem, but it does say that we follow Robert's Rules in all cases to which they are applicable. And that means that it's in which they are not inconsistent with these bylaws. These bylaws are amended to state that we do not accept nominations from the floor. So that's where we're not following Robert's rules, and we have stated it in our bylaws. If we want a stronger statement, we can make that. I don't have a problem with
Yeah,
that.
you've confused me.
Okay.
I'm under the impression that this meeting, we are following Robert's Rules of Order. And I thought we were doing that because that's been part of our bylaws.
This meeting, or you're talking?
The annual meeting follows Robert's Rules of Order.
This is a
Jack's-
procedural question, Jan. Let Jack.
Jack's gonna help me out.
Yeah.
So, we do follow Robert's Rules of Order when it applies when we want to. Traditionally, this church has its own rules, and we have been following those. What she is attempting to do is make the bylaws reflect the wishes of the congregation. As far as Robert's Rules of Orders, the UUA has not been using Robert's Rules of Orders for a number of years, and they are requesting us to consider a variation on that, which is called a democratic process, which was developed in 1990-something, as opposed to Robert's Rules of Order, which was designed for the government, the Washington, the national government to run, and were put in place just after the Civil War. It's a 700-page document. Nobody cares about that. Anyway, we're considering next year asking you to consider using the democratic process, not this year.
And I totally agree with that. I don't like the Robert's Rules for a loving congregation. I think we should not use Robert's Rules. But at this point, I believe that this meeting is being run under Robert's Rules, and that's in our bylaws. And we need to change that for next year.
Next
If
year.
we're not going to do Robert's Rules.
We are going to consider that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to ask the committees to evaluate it and see if it's easier and they like it. Basically, the difference, and this is educational piece, no. Anyway, it says in Robert's Rules of Order, what you do is you make a motion, and then you discuss it, and you do all kinds of things, and if you want to amend it, you go all the way back through the process to get rid of the first one and do a new one. In the democratic process, you turn to the person who's made the original offer and say it in a different way. reflecting what other people have said with an input, and they go, all right, here's my motion, and you vote on it. Now, there's a few other subtleties in it, but it's about that simple.
And it's a good plan to give us a year to learn the new system,
I
and
agree.
we'll use it next year.
Well, maybe, if we all agree with it. Yes, Gene?
Generally, in a meeting like this, in a public meeting, one of the first things you do is approve what rules of order you're going to use. We did not do that. There are all kinds of orders besides Roberts and besides this thing from Washington. If you want to look into those, you can. But there are various ways you can be democratic and undemocratic, and you may process them all if you wish. Okay.
We agreed not to mention in the beginning of the meeting, because it's an assumption that we would, one, use Robert's Rules of Order, because that's in the bylaws. Agreed. The other is that we have a tradition of doing things in this church, and we do it on the annual meetings, and this is how we vote year after year after year. Our bylaws do not reflect that, other than the bylaws say we use Robert's Rules of Order except in areas where the church itself has its own tradition of doing something. Yes, Rich?
I agree with everything that's been said before. Since we are currently under Robert's Rules of Order, the procedure would require someone to put in a motion to accept the bylaws, and then it's seconded, and then it's open for discussion, and then people can amend that, put a motion to amend
Right.
to accept the democratic rules. But if we are under Robert's Rules of Order, in order for this to be legal, we have to follow that procedure.
We are under Robert's Rules of Order, asterisk. This church, in our bylaws, says there are certain things that we do that are not,
And
According
that
to-
is, I agree, but that's not spelled out. And right now,
Well-
this meeting is under Robert's Rules of Orders and requires that procedure. It's not the exception, unless I'm wrong.
It does say it in here. It says, once again, that the rules contained in Robert's Rules shall govern the congregation board in all cases in which they are applicable and in which they are not inconsistent with these bylaws.
But that hasn't been approved yet.
Actually, this was in last year, too. I mean, this has been in for a long time. This is not a change.
But I thought at the beginning of this meeting, we said we were going to follow Robert's Rules of Orders for this meeting.
I didn't hear that. I don't know, maybe someone said that, I just didn't hear it. I didn't say it.
Then I'm not sure then what rules we're following.
we're following the rules that are set in the bylaws.
Which, okay, I'm confused.
Our
They
parliament,
say we follow Robert's Rules of Order unless we say otherwise. And current bylaws don't say otherwise.
yeah, they do.
They do.
They do.
They do for the nominating committee, but they don't have this part in it.
Let me just clarify, the nominating committee language is a new change. We took out nominations from the floor and are adding, we do not accept nominations from the floor. That's the change you will vote on today. But the language about the fact that we don't always and have not always followed Robert's Rules of Order in some of our processes has been in here for a number of years. That's not a change.
Yes, I forgot what the motion was, but I'd like to offer that we approve it.
There wasn't a motion. Would you like to make a motion? Yes.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by Tom. Tom. Voight.
There is no motion.
Would you state the motion again, Mark?
I thought there was a request to approve, and we got into the side discussion, which is wonderful. And at some point, we should bring it back to the meeting at hand, and that's what I'm asking that we do. So,
Would you like to make a motion to approve?
My question, approve what? Are we approving all of the changes or just this section?
All of the changes.
Then we cannot discuss
Well, we have a, my understanding is we have a motion, we have a second, and then discussion. And then a vote. That's what we're doing. Mark made a motion to accept. Tom seconded it. Tom Voigt. And now we can discuss.
I just have a question for clarification. If I understand what has been said, next year, we're going to be voting on taking out the Robert's Rules of Order thing and going with others, perhaps a Democratic one and all like that. Okay, why are we doing this one thing this year and not waiting until we've changed the rules of order, would make what you want to do possible?
I agree.
You're talking about the nomination part?
Yeah, right.
We were asked by the board to remove nominations from the floor, and so that's what I did.
Okay.
So if
you're-
Jack wants to speak to that some more, or discuss it some more with you, he can. However, the bylaws have a number of changes in them. One was the addition of the Finance Committee as a standing committee, the nomination part. We also removed the Ministry Committee. So there were several changes
I
that were
understand that.
substantial.
Right, but this one seems like it would be taken care of at next year's meeting if we change the thing, and we've already approved the nominations for the nomination committee.
Right.
So why is it necessary now? Why,
Well, I
why
don't
is
know.
this particular one necessary?
I mean, I think
I-
we were trying to make the bylaws consistent with our practice, and also something that any potential new minister could look at and say, this is how they do things. So when the board asked for that change, it wasn't inconsistent with our current bylaws, because the current bylaws, which have been in place, for several years, I assume, that section says that we can vary from Robert's rules if it's inconsistent with what we currently do. So I think it was more a clarification of how we're operating as opposed to changing the rules of order. That wasn't the intent of changing that section. It is confusing, I agree, Pat.
I also want some clarification. So we have this motion, and I'm unsure what the motion is. Is the motion to change everything as submitted in these new bylaws, or just this section?
The motion was to accept these bylaws as amended, as suggested.
That does not answer my question. Are we talking about just this,
We're talking about all of it.
or the whole thing?
Yeah.
So everything you've changed, I get to make any comment on,
Correct,
is only in this one vote.
correct.
I object to that.
I think that's my phone. I thought I turned it off. Anyway, sorry if it's mine.
So how does this work if you vote the slate down? What will happen under Robert's rules? If you vote the slate down, all the changes down, you do that, that's fine, that's how that works. Then you must vote on every individual
Right.
change.
Right. Is that what you want
Because
to?
it's either you accept the whole slate or it breaks out into all the individual pieces and you just simply vote on each one. So you can absolutely not accept the slate. That's fine. It'll just break it out and you just vote one after the other, hold quick discussion one after the other, and you get it out of there.
We can do that.
So we presently have a slate that's been offered, it has been seconded, we need to vote on it. If it is voted down, then we vote on each of them individually.
And Jack, you're talking about a slate of amendments, not a slate of candidates.
No.
Yeah.
That's the amendments, that's what we're talking about.
I don't want to confuse the two discussions.
So we either vote on everything she's offered it a number of ways, it was on the web, it's been on connections, it's been, anyway. We either vote for that slate as it's presented. You vote yes, we move on. If you vote no, then we start by going through the bylaws line by line, and on any change, we'll vote on those individually. And before you vote on them, they have to be rewritten by you here so that we know what the new language will be for each of them.
What I understand from this
Uh-huh.
and I can't remember how many there are, but you put forth a package of, say, 5 changes
Okay,
to the board. I understand. And so if there's one of those that we don't like, we have to vote against the whole thing, right? So that we
Correct.
can get to the one that
correct,
we don't like,
right.
okay?
But there can be discussion about which one you don't like, you know.
Yeah, so would it be right to amend your motion of
It's not my
all of them?
motion.
Well, okay, Mark's motion, all of them that say we agree with X, Y, Z and not A and B, and vote on that? and
Well,
then
we have to
back-
go by we have to go through the changes, each one then.
No, only for A and B,
No, you're correct, Joel. You can say
yes.
this one, and I make a motion that the rest be accepted as a slate, and that this one,
So we'd only have one discussion there.
you know,
Okay.
that works perfectly fine.
Okay,
All right, I would make such an amendment to Mark's motion,
okay,
and that we leave this idea of no nominations from the floor off, except all the other changes that you're proposing, and then come to a discussion of nominations from the floor.
okay.
Joel?
Yep.
That's a good point, because we went back and looked at the annual meetings, the last 4 annual meetings here. No nominations from the floor were accepted.
Just because it hasn't been used doesn't mean it shouldn't be
Yeah, but it's our tradition, and it has been proposed by the UUA to us, for us to accept that we've already been doing it.
Wait, hang on. We got 2 people talking. I can't hear either one. Joel, you were saying something.
I just think, I remember years where we had more than 2 people nominated, and then we had an election. You know what I'm saying?
Really?
So it was a possibility.
Yeah.
Can I bring up a procedural issue? Is this the only issue that needs to be discussed? Does anybody else have any other problems with what's presented? I happen to have one on the choosing of the bylaw committee. But is there just 2 issues and we can vote on the rest? I'm trying to.
Pam, did you have another issue other than that?
No, I was just saying that we have a motion on the floor, we have to vote on that first, before we talk about a new amendment, a new motion.
Okay. All right, so, and Linda, you said you have another,
Yeah, I was going to present a suggestion for an amendment. I thank the bylaws committee for the work that they've done, because I know this is a tough job. But I'm not comfortable with the board, as proposed, nominating a chair and the chair choosing the committee. I think a committee needs to be broad-based and representative, and I think this could lead to not a broad base. So I would like to see it go back, and I have the wording.
the wording that was in there before, I think was very confusing. And so I wouldn't put that same wording back if this motion carries. I would create new wording, because the previous wording sounded to me, as chairman of the bylaws committee, that the board would give me 4 more members. But then I just discovered that they weren't going to do that, and that was what they wished to do, is to have me select them. I don't have a,
Yeah, I would like to see it, oh darn, this darn thing is over my,
so you would like to see it say that the board selects the members of the bylaw committee?
yeah, selects the chairperson and the.
And the members.
And the members.
Okay.
With a comment, with the wording, to ensure wide representation. I think wide representation on all standing committees is important.
I agree.
Let me see who I should take this microphone to among all the people holding hands up.
Where is that
Wow,
part,
right
Linda? I'm
here.
having trouble finding it.
I'm Jean Spitzer. I was on the bylaws committee, and I want to commend Jan Linda, let me reassure you and everybody that this component of the bylaws was discussed in depth and at length, and the nature of our decision for changing it was this. We felt that there's something implicit in the character of this congregation, that in the past, given the composition of the Board of Trustees, there might be factors in their choices for the head of the Bylaws Review Committee and the people that they would recommend for that board that would not necessarily reflect the sense of fairness and diversity that is represented within the whole philosophy of this congregation. Therefore, there should, if this works properly, be some sort of consensus that arises in terms of people who are capable of leading the Bylaws Committee. And there are people, once that chairman has been chosen, that will speak up and will, by its very nature, emerge from within the congregation in a diverse reflection to serve on the Bylaws Committee. Thank you.
I would like to stand and agree with this lady. You know, we've got people here who have come to a meeting and we are being told what to do, that we have committees meeting. Well, how large are the committees? Are they 1, 2, 3 maybe? 3 is a large number in this group. Now, I think we've got to start realizing that this is a democracy. A church is a democracy, and people have a right to speak up. And if someone wants to nominate someone from the floor, what is a big sin? Even if they haven't done it for several thousand years. Like me, I might do it. Is that a sin? I don't know. I'm not a sinner. So I couldn't be able to tell you. But I think we should respect always the group. The group is very important, and you guys are just representatives of the group.
Thank you, Rosemary.
There's
Mark?
a lot, I'd like to speak just for a second
Sure.
from the floor and the UUA's thinking on that. Part of the problem that has traditionally happened with from the floor nominations is that those people have gone around every democratic procedure. They've gone around the request to speak to the nominating committee. They've gone around meetings that the nominating committee holds. They've gone around where the nominating committee puts out, like ours did, do you want to serve? You know, come talk to us. What do you want to give? The floor nominations tend to be folks who've deliberately walked around all of that, and they're like the Perry Mason trial, where the surprise evidence gets thrown in at the last moment. Except it's not supposed to work that way. They're supposed to put their name forward when everybody else does and be legitimately considered. The other problem is a lot of time the folks that volunteer from the floor are not suitable for that job. They like the idea of doing that job, but their name has not been suggested by anyone else. Their name's not been brought forward to the nominating committee. And I'm sure you all have been at a meeting where somebody stands up and says, I want to be president, and everybody else goes, oh dear God. And nobody says anything. And that person puts their name forward and they get no votes. And then they're hurt. They're badly hurt because they were the only one who thought they were suitable for that job. So the UUA over the years has said, look, use nominating committees, make it very possible for months for people to go to the nominating committee and say, hey, I want to serve, put my name forward. And try to avoid nominations before. You can still do them. I mean, it's not world ending. but that's the thinking.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment quickly to support Jean's statement. I've witnessed this community over the years, and I really trust the process that this community goes through in its discernment. And not everybody agrees, and we really have experts that will challenge, you know, can and should challenge every aspect of what we do. With all of that said, we do have a wonderful community, and I trust the process that we go through when we select leaders in our community to go through the work of the due diligence of examining an issue, and they bring it here after all the work they've done. I generally want to support that, and I humbly request that we consider calling the question on the vote.
Rosemary has another question or comment? Oh, I can't? Wait, hang on, Rosemary. He
All
called.
the nominating committee has to do to make themselves clear is to put a little thing in print as to what they do. And if they don't do a democratic job of doing it, we have a way then of saying, hey, you're putting your pal on. But if you do it in a way that is objective and really questions and really does a good job, there is no problem getting a decent candidate. The problem of getting someone who is not fit always exists.
So Mark asked that we call the vote. Is there a second? John? John? Now, help me here, Jack. Are we calling? Oh, all those in favor of calling the vote? Okay. It carries. Now we need to vote. Are we voting on the whole thing? Okay, I'm resubmitting the motion. Thank you. That we accept the bylaws as amended and as presented. All in favor?
Keep your hands in the air, make sure they count.
I think I see 3 abstentions or 4. Okay, all of those who are opposed to accepting the bylaws. Okay, we know you have more than that, okay. All right. Motion does pass. All right, thank you so much.
You elected a board last year that included Mo, who has been our secretary, has maintained transparency of the board's work and the work with the congregation. She has often been behind the scenes, but many of the activities would not have been accomplished to the high success that they were without her. The board will miss Mo, and with that, we're going to give you a flower. Keep it alive. When the pandemic hit Southwest Florida, more and more red dots appeared on regional maps, indicating that it was spreading. UCOV never made it to these maps because of our champion, Serena. She researched and presented compelling evidence for us to adhere to her recommendations. She was a forefront of the search to proceed to the process of us hiring a new minister and convinced the UUA to allow us to move forward at our pace. They later will catch up to us. The board will miss them both. Please give them a well-deserved. And now, a solemn moment.
As leader of the Caring and Remembrance Team, I'd like us to take a few minutes to remember the 4 UCOV members who died since our last annual meeting. Patricia Franks joined UCOV in March of 2016. She died unexpectedly on August 29th, 2022. Pat will always be remembered for her strong opinions and willingness to fiercely defend them. Teresa Hake was a UCOV member since October of 2001. She died on November 12th, 2022. Teresa and her husband Walter were very beloved in our UCOV community. Teresa moved to Apple Valley, Minnesota to be with her family after Walter's death. Shirley Davis joined UCOV in December of 2005. She died on November 16th, 2022. Shirley had a sparkling personality, great dimples, and she was the first and possibly the only true Universalist I ever knew. Bruce King joined us in October of 2009. He died on January 7th of this year. Bruce and his wife Marty were loved by everyone at UCOV. Bruce was a true gentleman. Bruce's family will have a memorial service on April 15th at 4 p.m. here in the sanctuary. These 4 individuals were a vital part of our UCOV family. Their memory will be with us always.
We have a board member whose activities extend back many, many years. After much of her resources have been burned, she's taking a break from her activities that involve leadership with UCOV. Serena, I don't know what we're going to do without you, but I offer you your own chalice for your home. Thank you for what you've done for me and for the board. Reverend Amy, would you please?
We extinguish this chalice, and we know that today we have done the sacred work of this congregation. You did a good job. Go in peace, go in love, go in joy, until we see each other again. Amen.
There being no further business, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Venice, I ask for a vote to end this meeting and for us to reconvene on the lanai for lunch. Got a motion? Got a second? Thank you, Rich. All in favor? Aye. To the lanai.